Most people know Zeus as the god who throws lightning bolts from Mount Olympus, but that's just scratching the surface. Zeus's story is actually the backbone of all Greek mythology, a dramatic saga of family betrayal, cosmic warfare, and divine justice. His journey takes him from a hidden baby destined to overthrow a tyrant, through a decade-long war that shook the universe, to becoming the ultimate ruler who enforces law and order across the cosmos. Along the way, he battles monsters older than time itself, forges alliances with gods, and shapes the destiny of both mortals and immortals. This is the complete story of how Zeus rose to power and why he remains the supreme authority in Greek mythology. Zeus's story begins with a terrifying prophecy. His father Cronus, king of the Titans, received a warning that one of his own children would overthrow him, just as he had overthrown his father Uranus before him. Consumed by paranoia, Cronus made a horrifying decision. Every time his wife Rhea gave birth, he would swallow the newborn whole. One by one, he devoured 5 children: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. When Rhea became pregnant with her 6th child, she couldn't bear to lose another. In desperation, she fled to the island of Crete. There, hidden deep within a cave on Mount Dicte, she gave birth to Zeus. To trick Cronus, Rhea wrapped a large stone in baby clothes and presented it to her husband, who swallowed it without hesitation, believing he had consumed his youngest child. The infant Zeus was raised in absolute secrecy on Crete. He was nursed by Amalthea, a divine goat whose milk gave him extraordinary strength. But keeping a godchild hidden from the ruler of the universe wasn't easy. Warriors called the Curetes stood guard outside his cave, clashing their bronze shields and spears together whenever baby Zeus cried. The thunderous noise masked his voice, preventing Cronus from discovering his location. Protected by divine magic and loyal guardians, Zeus grew in secret, developing the power and strength he would need to fulfill the prophecy and challenge his father. When Zeus reached adulthood, the time for revenge had arrived. With guidance from his grandmother Gaia, the earth herself, and help from the Titaness Metis, goddess of wisdom and cunning, Zeus devised a brilliant plan. He approached his father disguised as a cupbearer and offered Cronus a special drink, a powerful potion mixed by Metis. The moment Cronus drank it, his stomach began to convulse violently. Unable to control himself, he vomited up everything he had swallowed years before. First came the stone that Rhea had substituted, which Zeus later placed at Delphi as a sacred monument. Then, one by one, came Zeus's siblings, now fully grown gods who had been trapped inside their father for years. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon emerged, ready to join their youngest brother in revolt against the Titans. Zeus knew that defeating the Titans would require more than just numbers. They needed weapons of unimaginable power. Deep beneath the earth, in the darkest depths of Tartarus, Cronus had imprisoned monstrous beings he feared. The Cyclopes, one-eyed giant craftsmen, and the Hecatonchires, the 100-handed giants. Zeus descended into those depths and freed them. Grateful for their liberation, the Cyclopes used their legendary forging skills to create 3 divine weapons that would change the course of the war. For Zeus, they crafted the thunderbolt, a weapon of pure lightning that could shatter mountains. For Poseidon, they forged a mighty trident that could command the seas. And for Hades, they created the Helm of Invisibility, allowing him to move unseen through any realm. Armed with these god-killing weapons, the Olympians were ready for war. The Titanomachy, the War of the Titans, lasted 10 brutal years and shook the very foundations of the cosmos. Zeus and the younger Olympian gods fought from Mount Olympus, while Cronus and the elder Titans battled from Mount Othrys. The Hecatonchires, The hundred-handed giants hurled massive boulders like rain, each of their 100 arms launching rocks simultaneously. Zeus wielded his thunderbolt, splitting the sky with divine lightning that illuminated the battlefield. Poseidon commanded earthquakes and tidal waves. The clash was so violent that the earth itself trembled. For years, neither side could gain the advantage. But slowly, with their divine weapons and the overwhelming power of the hundred-handed giants, the Olympians began to turn the tide. Finally, after a decade of cosmic warfare, the Titans fell. Zeus's final lightning strike broke their resistance, and the elder gods surrendered. The punishment was severe and eternal. Most of the defeated Titans were chained and cast into Tartarus, the deepest abyss beneath the underworld, where they would remain imprisoned forever under the watchful gaze of the Hecatoncheires. But Atlas, who had led the Titan forces in battle, received a special punishment. Zeus condemned him to hold up the sky itself on his shoulders for all eternity, a burden so heavy that Atlas could never rest, never escape, forever supporting the heavens above the earth. With the Titans defeated, the three brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, stood as the victors. But who would rule what? To avoid another war among themselves, they agreed to decide by chance. They drew lots to divide the cosmos into 3 realms. Zeus drew the sky and claimed kingship over all the gods, becoming lord of Mount Olympus and supreme ruler of heaven. Poseidon drew the sea, becoming master of all oceans, rivers, and waters. Hades drew the underworld, ruling over the realm of the dead and all souls that passed beyond life. The earth itself remained neutral ground, shared by all 3 brothers under Zeus's ultimate sovereignty. From that moment forward, Zeus presided over the gods from his throne on Mount Olympus, the highest peak where heaven touches earth. But Zeus's authority wasn't just based on military might, it was founded on law and moral order. He became known by many sacred titles that revealed his true role in the cosmos. As Zeus Horkios, he was the guardian of oaths. Any promise sworn in his name became unbreakable, and breaking it meant divine punishment. As Zeus Xenios, he protected the sacred laws of hospitality, ensuring that guests and hosts honored their sacred duties to each other. As Zeus Agoraios, he oversaw assemblies and public gatherings where justice was dispensed. Even the gods themselves swore their most solemn oaths by the river Styx, and Zeus enforced these divine promises. Zeus's power extended far beyond throwing lightning bolts. He became the ultimate enforcer of divine law and sacred oaths. Any god who dared to break an oath sworn by the river Styx faced severe consequences. A full year of unconsciousness, followed by 9 years of exile from the divine councils on Mount Olympus. This wasn't just empty threat. Zeus personally ensured every punishment was carried out. He controlled the weather, sending rain to nourish crops or withholding it to bring drought. Thunder became his voice, and lightning his warning. He communicated through signs and omens, particularly at the Oracle of Dodona, where priests would interpret the rustling of sacred oak leaves as Zeus's divine messages. Most importantly, Zeus represented cosmic stability after generations of chaos and violence. The age of brutal succession wars had ended, replaced by his structured, lawful reign. Zeus's first marriage carried a terrifying warning that echoed his father's fate. He married Metis, the titaness of wisdom and cunning, described as the wisest being among both gods and mortals. But shortly after their union, a prophecy emerged from Gaia herself. Metis would bear 2 children. First, a daughter of extraordinary wisdom, and second, a son destined to overthrow Zeus, just as Zeus had overthrown Cronus, and Cronus had overthrown Uranus. The cycle of violent succession threatened to repeat itself once more. When Zeus learned that Metis was already pregnant, fear gripped him. He couldn't allow history to repeat itself. So Zeus devised a plan using the very cunning that made Metis so valuable. He tricked her into transforming into something small, Accounts vary whether it was a fly or a drop of water, and then swallowed her whole while she was still pregnant with their daughter. But swallowing Metis didn't end the story, it only moved it inside Zeus. Metis remained alive within Zeus's stomach and continued her pregnancy. More than that, she began forging armor and weapons for her unborn daughter in the depths of Zeus's belly. As the child grew, Zeus developed an unbearable headache that intensified until he was screaming in agony, loud enough to shake Mount Olympus itself. The pain became so excruciating that Zeus demanded help, either Hephaestus, the smith god, or Prometheus, the titan, depending on the version, took an axe and split Zeus's skull open. In an explosion of divine light, Athena emerged, not as an infant but as a fully grown goddess, already wearing the armor and helmet her mother had crafted. She sprang forth with a war cry, brandishing her spear and shield. Zeus had found a way to break the prophecy. By internalizing wisdom itself and giving birth to his daughter directly, he transformed the violent cycle of succession into something new. Athena became his favorite child and advisor, while Metis remained within him forever, whispering counsel. The prophesied son who would overthrow Zeus was never conceived, and the pattern was finally broken. After Metis, Zeus took Themis as his consort, the Titaness who personified divine law and order itself. This wasn't just a political marriage. It represented Zeus's commitment to ruling through justice rather than pure force. With Themis, Zeus fathered children who became the very embodiments of civilized society. The Horae were born first, 3 goddesses representing the seasons and social order. Eunomia became the spirit of good governance and lawful conduct. Dike personified justice itself, ensuring fair judgments. And Irene embodied peace, the absence of war and conflict. In some traditions, Zeus and Themis also created the Moirai, the 3 fates who controlled destiny itself, though other accounts claim the fates were daughters of the primordial night. These divine children weren't just symbols, they were active forces maintaining the structure of Zeus's cosmos. Zeus's unions extended beyond law to encompass culture and beauty. With Eurynome, he fathered the 3 Charites known as the Graces, goddesses of charm, beauty, and creativity who brought joy to both gods and mortals. But perhaps his most culturally significant union was with Mnemosyne, the Titaness of memory. Zeus spent 9 consecutive nights with her, and from this union came the 9 Muses, each born from a different night. These goddesses became the patrons of all arts, sciences, and literature. Calliope presided over epic poetry, Clio over history, Euterpe over music, and so on. By fathering the Muses, Zeus linked his kingship directly to human culture, wisdom, and creative expression. His power wasn't just military or legal, it was civilizational. Every poem, every song, every story told by mortals carried his influence. Zeus's most famous and turbulent marriage was to his own sister, Hera. As queen of the gods, Hera sat beside Zeus on Olympus and represented legitimate marriage, family, and social order. Together they had several important children. Ares became the god of brutal warfare and bloodshed. Hebe served as cupbearer to the gods and personified eternal youth. Eileithyia became the goddess of childbirth, assisting mortal women in labor. The parentage of Hephaestus, the craftsman god, varies in different accounts. Some say he was born from Hera alone as an act of retaliation, while others name Zeus as his father. But despite the importance of their union, Zeus and Hera's marriage was notoriously troubled. Zeus's countless affairs with other goddesses, nymphs, and mortal women created endless conflict. Hera, as the patron of legitimate marriage, took these betrayals personally and often persecuted Zeus's illegitimate children, creating some of mythology's most dramatic conflicts. Even after defeating the Titans, Zeus's rule faced new challenges from the cosmos itself. The Gigantomachy, the war of the giants, erupted when Gaia, still bitter over her Titan children's imprisonment, gave birth to a race of enormous beings specifically designed to overthrow the Olympian gods. These weren't ordinary giants. They were born from the blood of Uranus that had fallen on the earth, making them primordial forces of chaos. The giants were nearly invincible, and prophecy declared that they could not be killed by gods alone. A mortal hero had to strike the final blow. This is where Heracles, Zeus's future demigod son, would eventually play a crucial role. The Gigantomachy demonstrated that even the most powerful gods needed cooperation with exceptional mortals. It also showed that Zeus's authority rested not just on divine might, but on alliances that bridged the gap between heaven and earth. But the greatest single threat to Zeus's reign came from Typhon, the most terrifying monster ever born. Created by Gaia and Tartarus specifically to destroy Zeus, Typhon was a creature of pure chaos and destruction. From the waist up, he was humanoid, but massive beyond comprehension. From the waist down, instead of legs, he had countless writhing serpents. His arms ended in 100 dragon heads, each spewing fire and venom. His eyes blazed with hatred, and his roar was so terrible that even the gods fled in terror when they first heard it. Some accounts say his head brushed the stars themselves. The battle between Zeus and Typhon shook the entire cosmos. Zeus unleashed his thunderbolts in a continuous barrage, each strike illuminating the heavens like a second sun. The combat raged across multiple battlefields as Typhon fled from mountain to mountain. At one point, Typhon actually gained the upper hand. He wrapped Zeus in his serpentine coils, wrenched away Zeus's sickle, and cut the sinews from Zeus's hands and feet, completely paralyzing the king of the gods. The disabled Zeus was dragged to a cave in Cilicia, where a dragon woman named Delphine guarded both Zeus and his severed sinews. It seemed the prophecy of Zeus's downfall might finally come true. But Hermes, the cunning messenger god, along with Egipan, managed to steal back the sinews and restore them to Zeus's body. Reinvigorated and furious, Zeus pursued the fleeing Typhon with renewed vengeance. The fates themselves intervened, tricking Typhon into eating enchanted fruits that weakened him significantly. In the final confrontation, Zeus cornered the monster in Sicily and hurled the entire Mount Etna on top of him, burying Typhon alive beneath millions of tons of volcanic rock. To this day, the volcano's eruptions and fire are said to be Typhon's imprisoned breath trying to escape. This victory against the last cosmic challenger confirmed Zeus's absolute supremacy over the universe. Zeus's role extended far beyond military conquest. He was also the ultimate judge who punished those who defied divine law. Perhaps the most famous case of Zeus's justice involves Prometheus, the clever Titan who sided with Zeus during the war, but later became his greatest irritant. The conflict began at Mecone, where gods and mortals were dividing sacrificial portions. Prometheus attempted to trick Zeus by wrapping bones in attractive fat while hiding the good meat under ugly innards, hoping humans would get the better portion. Zeus saw through the deception but allowed it to proceed, using it as justification for future punishment. When Prometheus then stole divine fire from the gods and gave it to humanity, enabling civilization and technology, Zeus's anger reached its peak. The punishment was calculated and cruel. Prometheus was chained to a rock in the Caucasus Mountains, where every single day a giant eagle would descend and devour his liver. Because Prometheus was immortal, his liver would regenerate overnight, only to be eaten again the next day in an eternal cycle of agony. This torture would last for thousands of years until Heracles, Zeus's own son, would eventually free Prometheus, but only with Zeus's explicit permission, demonstrating that even mercy came under Zeus's ultimate authority. To counter the gift of fire and punish humanity for accepting it, Zeus orchestrated one of mythology's most consequential acts. He ordered Hephaestus to craft the first woman from clay. Each god contributed something to her creation. Athena gave her skills in weaving, Aphrodite gave her beauty and charm, Hermes gave her cunning speech, and Apollo gave her musical talent. They named her Pandora, meaning all-gifted. Zeus then sent her to Epimetheus, Prometheus's less clever brother, as a bride. Despite Prometheus warning his brother never to accept gifts from Zeus, Epimetheus was captivated by Pandora's beauty and married her. Pandora came with a mysterious jar, later mistranslated as a box, which she was explicitly told never to open. But curiosity overwhelmed her, and when she finally lifted the lid, all the evils, diseases, hardships, and sufferings of humanity came pouring out into the world. Death, disease, pain, sorrow, and countless miseries escaped to plague mankind forever. By the time Pandora slammed the lid shut, only one thing remained trapped inside: hope. Zeus's revenge on humanity was complete. They now possessed fire and knowledge, but would suffer for it eternally, with only hope to sustain them through their struggles. In the underworld, Zeus's justice created eternal punishments for those who had committed the most heinous crimes against the divine order. Tantalus, a king who had been honored to dine with the gods, decided to test their omniscience by murdering his own son Pelops, cooking him and serving him to the gods as a meal. Though the gods immediately recognized the crime and resurrected Pelops, Tantalus's punishment was designed to match his offense. He was placed in a pool of water beneath a fruit tree, but whenever he bent to drink, the water would recede, and whenever he reached for the fruit, the branches would rise beyond his grasp. Eternal hunger and thirst, forever tantalized by food and drink just out of reach. Sisyphus, the cunning king who had cheated death itself and betrayed divine secrets, was condemned to roll a massive boulder up a steep hill, only to have it roll back down just before reaching the summit, forcing him to start over for eternity. And Ixion, who had attempted to seduce Hera herself, was fooled by Zeus into coupling with a cloud shaped like Hera, which produced the race of centaurs. For his presumption, Ixion was bound to a flaming wheel that spins forever through the sky. These punishments weren't just revenge. They were cosmic reminders that challenging divine authority brought consequences beyond imagination. Zeus's judgment extended to humanity as a whole. During the Bronze Age, mankind became so wicked, violent, and disrespectful of the gods that Zeus decided to wipe them out entirely and start over. He unleashed a catastrophic flood that covered the entire earth, drowning nearly every living creature. Only 2 mortals were saved: Deucalion, son of Prometheus, and his wife Pyrrha, daughter of Epimetheus and Pandora. Warned by Prometheus of the coming disaster, Deucalion built a wooden chest, essentially an ark, and he and Pyrrha survived 9 days and nights floating on the floodwaters. When the waters finally receded and they landed on Mount Parnassus, they found themselves alone in a drowned world. Desperate to repopulate the earth, they consulted an oracle who told them to throw the bones of your mother behind you. After much confusion, they realized this meant stones from the earth, Gaia, mother of all. As they walked, throwing stones over their shoulders, a miracle occurred. The stones thrown by Deucalion became men, and those thrown by Pyrrha became women. From these stone-born people came a new, purer generation of humanity. Zeus had reset the world, demonstrating that his justice could be both destructive and restorative. Beyond cosmic events, Zeus played a crucial role in daily Greek life. As Zeus Haikisios, he protected suppliants, those who sought refuge and mercy, making every altar and hearth a sanctuary. Kings claimed to rule by descent from Zeus, using divine lineage to legitimize their authority over cities. The concept of xenia, sacred hospitality between guest and host, fell under his protection, and violating it meant inviting Zeus's wrath. The most visible celebration of Zeus's supremacy was the Pan-Hellenic Olympic Games, held every 4 years at Olympia in his honor. These weren't just athletic competitions. They were religious festivals where all Greek city-states declared truces and athletes competed as offerings to Zeus himself. Winners received not money, but wreaths and eternal glory, their victories seen as blessed by the king of gods. Zeus's symbols appeared everywhere in Greek culture. The eagle, his sacred bird that could fly nearest to the heavens. The oak tree, through which he spoke at Dodona. The thunderbolt, marking his power. And the aegis, his divine shield often carried by Athena. These symbols reminded every Greek every day that Zeus was watching and judging their actions. Zeus's role as father produced many of Olympus's most important gods. His union with Leto, a titaness of grace and motherhood, resulted in one of mythology's most dramatic birth stories. When Hera discovered Zeus had impregnated Leto, her jealous rage was so intense that she forbade any land on earth from providing Leto a place to give birth. Leto wandered desperately across the world while pregnant, rejected everywhere, with Hera even sending the serpent Python to hunt her. Finally, the floating island of Delos, which wasn't technically fixed land, agreed to let Leto rest. Clinging to a palm tree through agonizing labor that lasted 9 days and nights, because Hera detained Eileithyia, the goddess of childbirth, Leto first gave birth to Artemis. Then, with her newborn daughter helping as midwife, Leto delivered Apollo. These divine twins became 2 of Olympus's most powerful gods. Apollo became the god of prophecy, music, healing, and the sun, establishing the famous oracle at Delphi. Artemis became goddess of the hunt, wilderness, and the moon, protecting young women and animals. Both were fierce protectors of their mother, with Apollo eventually slaying Python as revenge for tormenting Leto during her pregnancy. With Demeter, goddess of harvest and agriculture, Zeus fathered Persephone, whose story would explain the changing seasons. Persephone grew into a beautiful maiden, and Zeus made a fateful decision. He permitted his brother Hades to take her as his queen. While Persephone was picking flowers in a meadow, the earth split open, and Hades emerged in his chariot, abducting her and dragging her down to the underworld. Demeter's grief was so overwhelming that she abandoned her duties, causing all crops to fail and threatening humanity with extinction. After searching desperately for her daughter, Demeter learned the truth and demanded Persephone's return. Zeus intervened, negotiating a compromise. Because Persephone had eaten 6 pomegranate seeds in the underworld, binding her to that realm, she would spend 6 months of each year with Hades as queen of the underworld, and 6 months with her mother on earth. This divine arrangement created the seasons. When Persephone returns to her mother, Demeter's joy brings spring and summer. But when Persephone descends back to Hades, Demeter mourns and the world experiences autumn and winter. Zeus's decision, while allowing the abduction, ultimately balanced the needs of all parties and gave the natural world its rhythm. Zeus's union with Maia, a shy mountain nymph who lived in a cave, produced one of mythology's most mischievous and clever gods. Hermes was born at dawn, and within hours of his birth he was already causing trouble. By midday, the infant god had crawled from his cradle, found a tortoise, killed it, and invented the lyre by stringing its shell. By evening, he had stolen 50 cattle belonging to his half-brother Apollo, cleverly making them walk backwards to confuse any tracker. When Apollo discovered the theft and angrily confronted the newborn, Hermes played innocent, even swearing false oaths while still in his cradle. Zeus was called to judge the dispute, but instead of punishing Hermes, he was amused by the baby god's audacity and cunning. Apollo's anger melted away when Hermes played the newly invented lyre. The music was so beautiful that Apollo offered to trade his entire herd for the instrument. The brothers reconciled, and Hermes was appointed as the god's messenger, guide of souls to the underworld, patron of travelers, merchants, thieves, and anyone who needed quick wits. His combination of cunning, charm, and loyalty made him invaluable to Zeus, running divine errands and serving as the link between heaven, earth, and the underworld. Zeus's affair with Semele, a mortal princess of Thebes, resulted in one of the strangest divine births. Hera, consumed by jealousy, disguised herself as Semele's old nurse and planted seeds of doubt in the princess's mind. She convinced Semele to ask Zeus to appear before her in his true divine form, the same form he showed to Hera. Bound by an oath sworn on the river Styx, Zeus couldn't refuse, even though he knew it would kill her. When Zeus revealed himself in his full glory as the god of lightning and thunder, the divine energy was too much for a mortal to withstand. Semele was instantly incinerated by the sight. But she was 6 months pregnant, and Zeus managed to rescue the unborn child from her womb. In an unprecedented act, Zeus cut an incision in his own thigh, placed the fetus inside, and sewed it shut. The baby completed development in Zeus's thigh over the next 3 months. When the time came, Zeus gave birth to Dionysus himself, making the god twice born, once from his mother and once from his father. Dionysus grew to become the god of wine, ecstasy, theatre, and religious frenzy, forever bearing the unique distinction of being the only god born from a mortal mother and gestated in Zeus's divine body. Among Zeus's mortal children, none achieved greater glory than Heracles. Zeus came to Alcmene, wife of the general Amphitryon, by taking his husband's form. From this union came Heracles, destined to become the greatest hero in all Greek mythology. But Hera's hatred pursued him from birth. She sent 2 serpents to kill him in his cradle, but the infant Heracles strangled them with his bare hands. Hera's revenge took a subtler form. She delayed Heracles' birth so that his cousin Eurystheus would be born first, making Eurystheus the rightful king instead of Heracles. This manipulation forced Heracles into servitude under Eurystheus, who assigned him the famous 12 labors, impossible tasks designed to kill him. Slaying the Nemean lion, destroying the Lernaean hydra, capturing Cerberus from the underworld, stealing the golden apples of the Hesperides, cleaning the Augean stables, and 7 other seemingly impossible challenges. Heracles completed them all through incredible strength, courage, and cunning. His labors became the backbone of countless myths and proved that even a half-mortal child of Zeus could achieve immortality through heroic deeds. Eventually, Zeus welcomed Heracles to Olympus as a full god, reconciling him with Hera and granting him eternal life among the immortals. Another famous hero descended from Zeus through one of his most unusual transformations. Danae was a princess whose father, King Acrisius, received a prophecy that his daughter's son would kill him. To prevent this, Acrisius imprisoned Danae in a bronze chamber or tower, making her inaccessible to any man. But Zeus saw the beautiful princess and desired her. Since she was locked away behind impenetrable walls, Zeus transformed himself into a shower of golden rain and poured through the ceiling into her chamber, impregnating her. From this golden union came Perseus, who would become one of mythology's greatest monster slayers. Despite Acrisius's attempts to kill both mother and child by sealing them in a chest and throwing it into the sea, they survived, and Perseus grew to manhood. He went on to slay Medusa, the snake-haired Gorgon, whose gaze turned men to stone, using her severed head as a weapon. He rescued the Princess Andromeda from a sea monster, establishing a royal lineage that would eventually include Heracles himself. And ironically, the prophecy came true. Perseus accidentally killed his grandfather, Acrisius, with a discus throw at an athletic competition, proving that even the king of gods' offspring fulfilled destiny.